Hi everybody, I'm Robert Storey from StoreyStudio. Thank you for all your questions. I've answered them as close to my own experience as I could, and I really hope that they prove useful to you. Good luck. How do I find making a living in a creative career? I think I wouldn't have it any other way. It's definitely not the easiest profession to make money, but I definitely think it's probably one of the most rewarding. It's such a magical thing to be able to go to work every day and to feel creative and to feel satisfied. So it can take a little bit of time, but that's not to say that there isn't money to be made in the creative industry. I think often we undervalue ourselves, which means we find it hard to see the value in what we can do. And it's important not to forget that it's a skill, and that skill is something that should be paid for. So ensuring that you're not being taken advantage of basically is a big thing. But aside from the financial aspect of working creatively, it can be quite frustrating, and it can be quite emotional, because we put so much of ourselves into the work that we do, and it's difficult when someone tells you that they don't like what you've done. So it's important to realize that you have to make compromises in what we do and not take things too much to heart. Okay, so what form of training did I do? When I finished my A-levels, I went to do a one-year foundation course where I experimented with lots of different creative disciplines, but ended up specializing in fine art. When I finished my foundation course, I then applied to do a BA in fine arts where I specialized in sculpture. And then when I finished my BA in sculpture, I applied to do some internships and work experiences with different artists. I actually applied to work with an artist in New York, so spent a summer as a studio assistant there. But whilst in New York, I also discovered that I was interested in doing set design, so I then applied for some projects working as a set design assistant. So advice to growing a new business or acquiring new customers. I would say that you're very much your own business, and if people enjoy working with you, they'll work with you again. So that's going to mean that you need to work really hard, that you're not cutting corners, and that you're being as amicable as possible within the realms of what's reasonable on your job. If someone loves working with you, then they're going to mention you and recommend you to their friends or to their business acquaintances. So it's really just a spider's web, and it expands from there. Second of all, I think it's incredibly important to be documenting your work as best you can. If you're working visually and you have a product to sell that's not tangible permanently, it's important that people can see that in order to know what you're capable of. So documenting, and therefore using your social media channels to show that work. It doesn't mean that you need to be on social media all the time, but as a platform, to have a website and to have social media is super important. So advice for those of you who aren't quite sure what creative path you'd like to take. For me, I really enjoyed the foundation year because I got to explore lots of different creative disciplines that I otherwise would never have really thought about. So having the time to explore different pathways and then spend a little bit of time focusing or specializing on one thing that you've particularly enjoyed. So then you can go on to applying for a BA or an internship or work experience with a bit more confidence. Failing that, I think it's an amazing opportunity to do work experience, because you can apply to work for someone whose work you admire, and you can really see the ins and outs of how a studio is working. So, maybe that'll be a month long, and the insight and the experience you get in that 1 month is really huge. So the most challenging or difficult parts of my job, I think first of all, it's time. We often don't have so much time to get so much work done. We're often asked to have things done by yesterday. So you have to have amazing time management skills. On top of that, we have to work with budgets all the time. So we have to be quite aware of how we're spending money and how we can make the most of the money that we do have for a project. So at the same time, making sure that we're being paid enough ourselves. I think often we undervalue the work that we do and therefore take less of a fee. Also, there's a lot of admin in the work that we do. So we spend a lot of time sending emails backwards and forwards, which ultimately takes away from design time. So it can be frustrating that you spend so much time at a computer when ultimately you want to be more creative by designing or making. And then the final thing would be people management. I do work with a team of people, and I have to be sensitive to their needs and to their feelings, and to make sure that everyone is being treated fairly. So a whole side to my job that I had never really thought about was managing people. So yeah, that's a whole different skill set to being a designer, but something that through experience you get better at. So what advice would I give to anyone who's trying to enter my line of work? First of all, I would say that your personality as a designer is what sets you apart from everyone else. It's your point of view and it's your aesthetic which makes you special. So spending time to create a portfolio of work to show to prospective employers or clients to show what it is that you're going to create for them. Second of all, leading on from that, it's important to be able to communicate your work. So it's definitely worth acknowledging that it's incredibly beneficial to be able to use 3D software. So that could be SketchUp or Vectorworks or Rhino in order to communicate that work. Without being able to communicate, we will never have the ability to sell our work to someone because they can't see into our brains. Third of all, I think it's about having a really great attitude and being genuinely excited about the work that you're creating. So going and applying for internships or work experiences with people who you respect and whose work you want to learn from. So yes, I did do some work experience and internships. However, I really wish that I had done more. When I graduated, I worked for some artists for a summer, and then after that summer, I started working for a set designer, followed by a few more set designers, which was an amazing experience, and I really feel like I learned more during that time than I learned anywhere else, to be honest. I wish I'd done more because it would have actually given me a better understanding and a wider knowledge for the work I'm doing now. The reason I didn't was because I actually started getting work on my own and my own studio started taking off. But in retrospect, had I worked more with someone else, I would have probably accrued a lot more knowledge. If I could offer my younger self some words of advice, I would say ask more questions, be less shy, and have more faith in your design ability. I think I was often too shy to ask people questions, and without asking questions, it takes a lot longer to learn something. I think I realized that when I was starting to ask people questions, I was getting answers, and people were really happy to help me. Trusting in my design ability, I think that without so much experience, I always felt like my ideas were inferior or maybe they weren't as good, so I let people tell me what to do more. And I think it's important that designing is about collaboration and it's about exchanging ideas, but also ideas and creativity is quite subjective. So if you think you have a great idea, then don't be afraid to push it.